Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode 294. A shout out to our viewers to like this program so that it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Monday, the 13th of December, and here's what we have for you around the world. Sridharji, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir. Always a pleasure to have you as a co-host.
Namaskar, good morning to everybody. Indeed, sir, it's always a pleasure to be partnering and sharing our perspectives collectively to people around the world.
And the Congressional Budget Office wants Biden that his social welfare bill will add $3 trillion to the deficit. Biden, on the contrary, is meeting Joe Manchin, Senator, later this week, seeking his support for the $1.9 trillion budget proposal. Sridharji, CBO, from what I read here, is saying that the Biden administration is completely out of whack as far as the numbers are concerned. That's how I read it, sir. Your thoughts?
I think I tend to agree with you. We already reported in DGI an independent assessment which says that it is not net neutral and it is going to, extrapolate and contribute to further deficit as well as to the total debt. CBO, which generally is on the dot, has confirmed that it is going to add another $3 trillion to the deficit. And Mr. Manchin, who is standing between Biden's agenda and more sensible and frugal and fiscal discipline, is standing in the way. So Biden is trying to persuade him to edge past. I don't know whether Manchin is going to budge.
And Brian Williams, in his parting speech at the NBC studios, delivers a very chilling message to America. America being burned down with us inside. Sridharji, NBC has been fairly out of the controversy in terms of whether they lean left or right. We don't know because we know clearly CNN leans left and Fox leans right. I have not really put a position for NBC. This statement of Brian Williams, what do you make of it, sir?
MSNBC is left, sir. So therefore,
no. NBC, sorry. I'm sorry. MSNBC, I'm separating them from NBC. So look at it that way. So limited point. Yeah.
I hear you. So NBC, CNBC, tend to be, I would use the word neutral, but be sympathetic. Whereas the MSNBC, which belongs to the same family, is to the extreme kind of liberal views. It's obviously this contrarian, so there's nothing wrong because we are very clear in our perspectives. But we will share that video in the PGurus channel.
Show more section, yeah.
In the section, and you can hear for yourself, and it's a very telling statement. The person who says, I've been in 42 years in media business, and I'm quitting because I clearly see people who are eminently qualified doing things that is contrarian to what is expected of them. But right now we are looking down the barrel in terms of where we are heading unless we change direction. But it's a very chilling message coming from a very reputed and very respectable figure in the media business in the United States. That's Mr. Brian Williams.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio contemplates introducing a proposal that would ban cities from receiving funding which approves illegals to vote. In Florida, Governor DeSantis has introduced a proposal to raise $8 million budget to relocate illegal immigrants to Delaware and Martha's Vineyard. This is where the rich of the rich, richest among the rich, stay. Sridharji, I don't know whether I should laugh or get serious about this. So there are two parts to this. Senator Rubio wants to basically stop funding the city of New York, which is the first one which seems to be contemplating this. And the second part is DeSantis' proposal. Maybe you can split them and let's take a look at it one at a time, sir.
Okay, I think Rubio is saying that we have to have a mechanism at the center because the stimulus, which once it is approved, we have no control over how the stimulus is directed. So what we will now do is that we have funding that we target to local councils, local cities, and etc. So we can use that as a weapon to make sure that the money is not misdirected and the money is blocked and denied to those cities which are abusing and misusing the money for the purpose of relocating these illegals and funding. So that is Marco Rubio's as to how he believes he can. Now, as far as DeSantis is concerned, he says, let's assume that somehow this gets through, which was the case in the case of Florida, especially Miami and some of the other cities. People landed and they are being housed. And I think we covered this in the last DGI. They're being housed in facilities, which is state sponsored and supported. And he's saying he's coming up with a budget, and those state facilities where these people are housed, he's going to personally fund them and take them in the same buses or maybe even planes and locate them in Delaware, which is Mr. Biden's constituency, and Martha's Vineyard, which is Republicans, Democrats, no exception. But typically you find there's a lot of, where is Massachusetts? Massachusetts is another blue state. Where's Martha's Vineyard? He's in Massachusetts. So therefore, I think he says, we'll take them there. You feel it, you are good, right? You have plenty of money. You feel the pinch and you accommodate these people. So I think both of these people in their own respective ways are sending a message.
And Arizona is looming as a new hotspot for illegal infiltrations as clashes emerge and the National Guard troops are deployed. Rep. Tom Tiffany has raised the issue with open borders pose grave national security risk to the country. Sridharji, no surprise here. We have been among the first to raise this alarm right after the Biden administration opened the gates wide. No checks, not even checks for COVID. And now America is basically realizing, or probably they are, experiencing the folly of this. And we still don't know where the vice president of the country is. She's supposed to be managing this thing. Well, less said the better about that part. Sridharji, Arizona. Next, it'll be California, and then it'll be probably Texas. What is really going on, sir? And I'm really concerned.
Well, Texas is number one. They're already feeling the pinch, and they have been coming up with policies and frameworks. We have seen worse incidents under the bridge, etc. Arizona has had hot, cold, but now Arizona has become the epicenter for skirmishes, and they find what you call as the new front whereby people can creep in. California has already been the very accommodative and collaborative center for accommodating from overseas refugees to people freely coming into the state. So therefore, I think whether it will further saturate, we don't know. As far as California, Arizona is concerned, I think there are flashes of problems, and what Mr. Pat Tiffany is pointing out is. Mr. Tiffany is pointing out is that Tom Tiffany, not Pat Tiffany, Tom Tiffany is pointing out is that we have a problem, and therefore, and this is not just people coming in, this is a national security problem, because these are not just people from specific, Central American republics, but there are all types of people coming in posing, because there's no checks and balances at all. So national security. So I think he's alerting the issue.
And 29 states across the country report Omicron cases, and most among vaccinated, as cases continue to rise in the United States. Sridharji, so if I understand this correctly, and set me right if I'm wrong in my understanding, it appears that Omicron is able to get past the first and the second shot of the vaccine?
It's basically what they're saying is the first generation, we called it, the two-dose vaccine process, which created sufficient what you call antibodies to repel, including the Delta variant, is apparently no longer effective against this new molecular structure or new virus strand called as the Omicron. It seems to penetrate easily and infect people, especially those who have been vaccinated twice. So what the research and what the doctors are saying is, you not only need two, but you probably need booster one and maybe even booster two to address this specific new strand. And not only that, it spreads. Of course, it has not been, most of the research, most of the report points out that as far as it stands today, it doesn't seem to be very dangerous, but at the same time, it does spread very fast. and necessitating the need for booster plus as a mitigating point. That is the issue.
And viewers, I want to qualify that the two vaccines that are used predominantly in United States is Pfizer and Moderna, because Johnson & Johnson has only one-shot vaccine. So I don't think that is counted in this. But Pfizer and Moderna have been the ones, I mean, if you take as a rough percentage, maybe 85 to 90% would be one of those two bins. So I just want to qualify that. And we have to wait and see how this thing plays out. And I'm curious how India is looking at this. Right now in India, there are only 38 cases, and most of them seem to be quite mild, just like the way you mentioned, sir. So let's move on and let's wait and see what happens. Moving on, United States urges more diplomatic engagement with Taiwan after it loses a close ally in Nicaragua. We reported this yesterday, viewers, and Sridharji, Nicaragua's, jumping to the China camp. How much of an impact is that for the Central American region?
It is significant from a Central American region point of view. Taiwan had maintained pretty close proximity with the Central American, countries. Had also maintained with Eastern Bloc of countries. So if it begins to develop an epidemic of losing some of these countries in terms of their acceptance of the autonomous state of Taiwan as opposed to independent, then that epidemic will begin to quickly catch up. What United States is pointing out, quite correctly so, is that China is adopting a three-pronged strategy. One, it is adopting constant military incursions to threaten and subdue Taiwan. Second, it is applying economic and other types of pressures on Taiwan, plus, of course, local politicians. And the third, that it is now it is trying to squeeze from a diplomatic point of view to isolate Taiwan, to say that the countries will start, those countries which support Taiwan will get adequate punishment or lack of support from the Chinese by way of aid, trade, and other kinds of things. So three-pronged strategy. So US is saying we need more diplomatic engagement and support of Taiwan by other nations so that there is a unified front.
Sridharji, the next news item that I'm going to read is equally controversial in my opinion. The G7 at its meetings over the weekend expressed deep concerns over its coercive economic policies and other matters. G7 is blaming who, sir? G7?
China.
Okay.
G7 is blaming China that this is the Belt and Road debt diplomacy. You give aid, you put draconian penalties, and then you effectively threaten them to hand over. You see this in Sri Lanka, you see this in probably Pakistan, Afghanistan, you see this in some of the Southeast Asian, you see this in Africa most notably. So you're beginning to see this coercive stand that being adopted by China. First, aid, second, debt, and third, everybody knows when you take the money, you have no capacity to pay, and it makes it worse in the present pandemic circumstances. So they're basically saying they will not be supportive, and they're going to exert pressure on this coercive diplomacy of China.
The next news item is going to blow your mind away. France and Macron win in New Caledonia, thwarting Chinese push as people vote to remain with the French and reject independence. This has been a long festering demand that they wanted to secede. Now, where did the Chinese come into this whole picture, Sridharji?
They have been encouraging the Caledonians to go independent. Again, they said that they would be supportive with an economic package. Caledonia is very important within the Pacific coast from a context of the cable line diplomacy and the cable line strategy that China wants to adopt to manipulate and maneuver that region. So therefore, there was a lot of effort putting by the Chinese covertly or openly, and the fact that Mr. Macron campaigned as well as got them across the edge is very positive, at least from an immediate sense. Whether it will be sustained, we don't know. From an immediacy point of view, That is why Caledonia becomes very important within the context of what is going on in the Indo-Pacific.
Sridharji, where exactly is Caledonia located?
In the upper Pacific, around Papua New Guinea, Nauru, Kiribati, those Pacific islands, that's where the New Caledonia is located. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, sir. And the United Kingdom warns of Omicron tidal wave as it spreads rapidly, and PM Johnson says 2 doses inadequate to address the virus. We just covered the US part of this. Now UK is saying the same thing. Sridharji, what are the prevalent vaccines in the United Kingdom, sir?
AstraZeneca. We didn't cover that. AstraZeneca, we don't use it in the United States. The AstraZeneca variant is used called Covishield in India. AstraZeneca variant is used in Australia. Parts of Asia as well used AstraZeneca besides Moderna and Pfizer. United Kingdom uses quite extensively AstraZeneca. So the fact that, they find that the AstraZeneca is also inadequate, and the fact that the rising cases of active cases of COVID in UK. We again covered this last week. We haven't given an update. We showed you Russia, UK, and United States top the list, and many other nations are following suit very, very fast. So the fact that the UK is warning that this is like a tidal wave should be an alarm bell, should send alarm bells to the rest of the nations to act decisively and fast and isolate people as soon as they detect this Omicron virus.
And Germany is committed to Ukraine gas transit road, says new Chancellor Scholz. Sridharji, this is, I think, one of the first statements that the new incoming Chancellor has made.
It is. It's a very important statement from him. He stresses the importance of Nord Stream 2, but at the same time, he says Ukraine is an integral part of it. The pipeline flows through Ukraine. There's no compromise on that being the gateway. That also sends a message to Belarus, don't fool around.
And Australia, Japan, and the United States will fund undersea cables for faster internet connectivity to 3 Pacific countries of Kiribati, Micronesia, and Nauru. Well, they are all adjacent to Caledonia, I guess. Sridharji, I think this is a good thing, right? A lot of people holiday there, and internet, giving good speeds is a good thing for the country as well as the people who are visiting them.
No, you are absolutely correct. More important that it is the sovereignty. Okay, once China gains foothold, it has every reason from a security point of view to send its military vessels to justify the rationale that it is protecting the assets and investments. I think that is the strategy. And then, of course, they give you aid to the small nations, which they know they are not capable. Then eventually they will be swallowed by the Chinese. So it's a fairly good effort by the United States and Australia and UK. Why they don't include France into this is beyond belief. But I think at some stage they got to bring France into the equation because French do have Pacific Island interests, as we pointed out.
Taliban is quietly developing an army with China and Pakistan to defend itself while faced with food and medicinal shortages and a collapsing economy. Sridharji, what is the army that 40,000 odd people that the Taliban comprises of? They are not an army?
I have no idea, but all we are seeing right now here is whether it is a belligerent statement or whether it is meant to send a message, we don't know. But whether there is also an infiltration by the Pakistani militia into that army, so that they can be the remote control and commandeer this army, begs the question whether there is going to be Chinese strategic influence under the pretext of ISIS-K, whether they are building a fortress. Remember, United States left an Armageddon of machinery there, and whether they're going to put those machines to use for their self-interest. It's a very important statement. ISIS-K and protecting their national boundaries is what they have stated. So whether, we remember that United States targets some of the ISIS-K and the Taliban targets using drones. We are now beginning to see that 3I activity potentially being replicated in the Afghan region, except the Chinese and the Pakistanis may be cohorts with Afghanistan in this effort. But it is not a very positive development within the context of stability in the region.
And Iran thinks Israeli efforts are futile amid Vienna talks as Biden moves closer to the Israeli calls for a plan B. So, Sridharji, this is another self-inflicted wound as far as the Biden administration is concerned. In my opinion, they could have just sat on this, taken it on a later day. These are all what I would call as, compulsions because of the fundraising that they have done. And what they've done, they've gone and tried to hang one GOP congressman for taking $30,000 donation from a Nigerian expat for Christian causes. It's mind-blowing, Sridharji. What is going on?
I think that Mr. Naftali Bennett and the Israeli defense minister, we covered this yesterday, had persuaded and indicated that compromising and negotiating with Iran is futile because the outcome is not going to be achieved. That's exactly what is going on. On one hand, Iran is speaking in Vienna. They got back to the table. They were kind of going up and down. They got back. And then you have now the situation where they suddenly realize that the enrichment is at its potential. The drone development is at its full potential. Apparently, they have come up with this new naval vessel fleet called as Shiraz, which is capable of, a number of, military facilities and capabilities. Wouldn't have happened without the help of either the Chinese or the Russians. So you have, a battle-hardened and a battle-prepared Iran, which is willing to make the other nations blink. And probably Biden is beginning to realize this based on advice from his own defense team. And he says, let's kind of get ready for plan B, which he should have done a long time ago.
And 55 high-definition cameras, one drone, will be covering Prime Minister Modi's grand Kashi corridor project that is being inaugurated today. Sridharji, I have some thoughts on this, but first, your 2 cents on this, sir.
No, my 2 cents on this are that there seems to have been some challenges raised around whether the Agama or whether there was any violations and norms. I think that there has been an adequate explanation given in terms of the methodology that has been used to create this corridor and unbridled access between Lord Vishwanath Temple and to the gods in Ganges. When you look at the images and the pictures and the work that has been done, I think it just reinforces this probably should have been done long time ago. And it's a very, very telling and very compelling piece of work. And not only that, I think if I'm correct, between 25 to 27 temples that were buried have been restored, which had the entirety in its structure. Not all temples that were hidden under the houses could be restored for various reasons, but at least they have restored these 27 temples, which they could. But it again points out to the fact that how much of the history has been misled and incorrectly communicated, and without this effort, whether we would have discovered any of these things remains a very big question mark. Those are my observations sitting from the distance.
Absolutely, sir. And my limited understanding of Sanatana Dharma is that anytime you disturb an existing temple, then you take the murti carefully from there and you put it at a place what is called as Bala Alayam. Then you find the temple for the murti, and then you do a Kumbhabhisheka with the original murti being taken from the Bala Alayam and put in the new constructed place. I think the Prime Minister and the government is going to do this thing. We'll wait and see, because as you correctly pointed out, there are a lot of buildings that have been built over these temples. And at least the fact that from the Kashi Vishwanath temple, by the way, inside the Kashi Vishwanath temple, the actual linga is still buried underwater. So we have to wait for that. That is a matter that is different. But at least outside, they have cleared cleared the path from the temple to the Banaras River. It's very commendable, but I think there are some of these things, these are like, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Let's move on to the next item, sir. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the SaryoKanal national project that will provide assured water for irrigation to over 14 lakh hectares of land and benefit 29 lakh farmers. The project entailed interlinking 5 rivers for optimum water usage. This is fantastic, Sridharji. So far, I have not read any of this stuff. This is the first time, I'm telling it, and I'm sure many of our viewers will be surprised to know that 5 rivers were interlinked for optimum water utilization. Sridharji, can you please expand on this a little bit, sir? I think it is worth expanding.
Well, I think that the first and foremost, this is a project which was, if I remember correctly, goes back to either 1970s or 1980s, and the project never took off the ground. Effectively, the concept is they're all, in some varieties, they're tributaries. I think Rajni, and there's about 4 other rivers. It's like feast and famine. Water excess flow in one, floods, and famine or dry in the other. So they have integrated these 5 rivers into a harmonious kind of a canal and channeled it towards the eastern UP, cultivating large segments of the land. And I think the number of hectares that has been brought under the irrigation supply, one can see. Number of farmers who are potentially impacted, one can see. I have seen, again, we will share some of these pictures in the PGurus post. Some of the pictures, this was inaugurated and this was shown, reflects tremendous amount of work as well as the benefit, economic benefit that people can derive. The pictures tell 1,000 words. The pictures tell a story. So I think one has to commend Yogi's government, the present chief minister, for accomplishing this project in such a short span of time that has been kept pending for years.
And United Nations grants observer status to India-led International Solar Alliance in a big win for One Sun, One Earth, One Grid initiative. Sridharji, I think it is very good to see India taking the leadership in the solar energy initiative, sir.
Yes, this is indeed. In fact, you remember that from the UK summit, Prime Minister Modi addressed and was openly endorsed by the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And then immediately supported by both Italy as well as now subsequently by Germany. Now United States has joined, Israel has joined, recognizing that, if we do this, then we have to interconnect the world, and the power grids should also be interconnected so it can be seamlessly shared across the world, rather than each person claiming benefit for himself or herself. So the interconnection part of it is good. So UN is saying that it'll take an observer status to make sure that, because it is multi-world project, that they would give it an observer status and put an endorsement. I mean, it's, as you rightly said, it is a kind of a development from the recognition point of view.
All 5 Central Asian nations to be chief guests at the Republic Day parade as India continues its efforts to cement relationships with its neighbors in the region. Germany, Japan, Sri Lanka, Rwanda, UAE, Indonesia are some of the countries in the travel itinerary of the Prime Minister for 2022. India is also working on a credit package for Sri Lanka. Sridharji, first Sri Lanka. This was much talked about that Sri Lanka is looking away from India towards China because India wasn't reworking one of its or some of its loans. I think that now seems to be back on track, and India is rescheduling some of the payments that Sri Lanka has to make. I think this augurs well for Indo-Sri Lankan relations, in my opinion. Sridharji, your thoughts and on the countries that Modi ji will be visiting in 2022?
I think the package is very good. Basically, for all the imports, they're giving credit from India, especially the agricultural products, medicine, food supplies, etc. So that it augurs well for Sri Lanka. It's much needed support, and being a neighbor, makes it even more compelling. I think it's also on the back of somehow they were able to successfully wean away even the Chinese. This is the Indo-Japan efforts from that Colombo project. So that also is very positive. So I think in those two contexts, I think that this is a very positive development. Probably few people were involved in the diplomacy to achieve this outcome. As far as the visit is concerned, it just tells you where the strategic partnerships for India is going to come from by way of the visits. Let's take UAE. UAE has clearly emerged as one of the big partners. There is a global forum that is being addressed by the Indian leadership on the December 13th and 14th in UAE. And UAE and India are very significant bilateral trading partners. And, they have added Israel to that. Then you look at the next one, Russia, Indonesia. Indonesia is again very strategic within the context of the Indo-Pacific, plus also from a trade point of view. So he is visiting Indonesia. Of course, Russia, needless to say, continues to be, in my view, somehow United States, India is acting as a buffer between the United States and Russia. I feel that something positive will come out of it. Then moving to the next, Germany. There's a new leadership in town in Germany. So he is making a visit to Germany for that purpose. It's very interesting. He's going to the Scandinavian country, Denmark. Again, this is on the whole issue around climate, as well as seeking support. Denmark, some of the Scandinavian countries are very important in the United Nations. Is duly recognizing the importance of Denmark and the Scandinavian nation. I think Rwanda is very much the African, very badly impacted. I think they're going to probably give aid, and there's a positive relationship between India and some parts of Africa. I won't say all of it. So that just reflects the strategic priorities that are being laid out. And very similar to ASEAN, inviting the Central Asian republics as a group to be the chief guests at the Republic Day parade also tells you the importance of the region, given the Afghan, China, Pakistan alignment.
And before we wrap today's program, a look at the market. Sridharji, what do you think that we are going to be expecting for this week ahead, sir?
I think this week the markets will operate on a narrow, positive territory.
Yeah, because we are nearing holiday season. Yes,
we are nearing holiday season. I think people have, the S&P is up 26% for the year. The markets have done a stellar performance. So therefore, I think that we may begin to see some, territory around the oil moving, the prices moving up. We may also see some pressure on the interest rates on the treasury bonds. But, when we get to the end of the year, we'll give you a 2022 oversight. But as far as Sree's question is concerned, we'll begin to see moderate, unless there's some big negative news on the COVID situation. I think that's very predictable in terms of what you're seeing by way of data.
And that brings us to a close of today's Hangout. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and consider joining our channel. Namaskar, Sridharji, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day or wonderful